Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cynthia Lavin. I am with the Southeast Florida Better Business Bureau. I'm the VP of Communications and Community Engagement. We're just going to give it till 3:05 to allow more of the registrants to come in, and then we will get started.
Are we expecting an audience only from Florida today, or were we able to include a few
We
others?
actually shared it with other Better Business Bureaus, and
Great.
California shared it, and so I think we're going to have a bit of a mixed bag there. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Well, it's a federal topic, so
Yep,
impacts everyone nationwide.
absolutely.
Been actually developing headlines today. I was uh I was on stage with a litigator who has some experience in constitutional law, and I presented from 9 to 10:30 with him, and then we stepped off and we're having some water, and we were getting updates live from
There you go.
the DOJ. So
Yeah,
it was a fun morning in
yeah, for sure.
federal regulation.
Yeah. It changes. You go to sleep with one and wake up with a different one, right? So,
Things move fluidly sometimes.
yeah. Let's see, we have 21 attendees. That's a good number so far. I've presented for two people before, so.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, I get through my presentations no matter what.
Yeah,
So,
I hear you.
yeah.
I've done two. I've done 2,000. I haven't
Yeah.
gotten to 20,000 yet, but we'll get
Everyone's
there
just as
eventually.
important, and if they took the time to show up, then I'll go through my presentation like it's a big audience.
Certainly. Yep.
Let's see, we're just coming up on the hour. Mm, Okay. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Cynthia Lavin. For those of you who were not here when I introduced myself, I'm the VP of Communications and Community Engagement for the Southeast Florida Better Business Bureau. Today we have with us Mr. Frank Tumminello. He is the CEO and co-founder of FileForms, and he will be covering the topic of the Corporate Transparency Act. As some of you may or may not know, there's some regulations in regards to this. So today you're going to be learning about what it is, what it means for your business, how it's going to affect you, and some new happenings that came about that act recently. So please hold all questions to the end. And if you have any questions, put them into the Q&A box and we will try to get to them as soon as Frank is done with all of the presentations. So just make sure you write them down. This presentation is going to be sent over to you once we get through it, so as well as the slides. So thank you guys so much for spending a bit of your afternoon with us.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. Great to be speaking with all of you today, and very much looking forward to presenting on this topic because it's one that, quite frankly, has been overlooked throughout the year, and I'm really glad to see the audience today looking to engage and learn more about how they can stay compliant with the federal law running a business here in the United States. And thank you, Better Business Bureau as well for the opportunity to present. So with that, we'll jump right into it. My name is Frank Tumminello. I'm CEO and co-founder of FileForms. Me and my team come from a long track record within financial services, accounting, and the legal community. I personally come from a decade-long background of working in financial services and technology, really starting my career in the investment banking space, advising banks through very strategic transactions, and then really spent the lion's share of my career working in the private equity investment space, investing in and growing financial services, healthcare, and insurance businesses. I studied physics, math, computer science in college, and always wanted to be an entrepreneur. So this has been an amazing journey, and we've now been in business for over 2 years, and it's been exceptional helping all these businesses, get aware and compliant with this new law called the Corporate Transparency Act. But just a quick agenda on today and what we plan to cover. We'll cover a little bit about who we are, why you should care about the Corporate Transparency Act at all. We'll provide a nice overview of the law and ultimately the reporting requirements. We'll provide some recent updates from FinCEN, what to expect from perhaps some court cases that folks might be familiar with or looking to learn more about. And then ultimately, we'll help you develop a plan of how to prepare before the deadline. So why don't we jump right into it? Quickly on FileForms, as I mentioned, we were founded 2 years ago by a group of CPAs, attorneys, and industry professionals. We're based in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. However, we do have a hybrid team spread out the U.S. All of our employees are based here in the U.S., including our development team. And we actually work with CPAs and law firms in all 50 states and over 100,000 businesses, and actually 10,000 professional services providers. So it's great to be serving such a large community that is continuing to evolve and expand. We do have an award-winning piece of technology, and we really built our platform around beneficial ownership information reporting, but now have grown into other services as well, which we'll touch on. And our technology is SOC 2 compliant, which may not mean much to most, but if anyone comes from the bank technology or security world, certainly appreciate the nature of how difficult that is to achieve and ultimately the privacy and security it means that we keep around our data and our platform itself. And we do have a direct API integration with FinCEN, and have also won quite a few awards from different associations and industry brands regarding our technology and our ability to add value to our clients. So we'll start from when the law was passed. The Corporate Transparency Act was actually passed unbeknownst to many in 2021. Rightfully so, the nation was consumed by the COVID pandemic, and we were focused on staying healthy and keeping the lights on in our businesses. But ultimately, this law passed requiring small businesses the need to file beneficial ownership information on a report with the federal government. And the law actually had 2 years of kind of settling in, and then ultimately went into effect at the first of this year in 2024. But effectively, the law is giving until year end of 2024 the opportunity for businesses to file this report, or businesses that were formed in 2024, 90 days from their formation date to file the report with the federal government. We'll go into more detail as we go throughout the presentation, but it's also helpful, first and foremost, to appreciate who's actually regulating this new law. Obviously, it's the federal government, but the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, more specifically, is probably a government agency that many folks on this call today have never even heard of or have never had to deal with before. So it's not the IRS, which obviously just about every business owner is very familiar with, but it's an agency that was stood up actually in the late 90s, really to help regulate and police the financial crime and bad actors within our country, through policing financial crime. And really their mandate started in the financial services space, really within the banking industry, and then slowly but surely expanded their jurisdiction to cover the real estate industry and now small businesses with the passing of the Corporate Transparency Act. But effectively, FinCEN has really good intentions. It's to prevent money laundering, terrorist funding activities, and other illicit activities that go on within our nation, which ultimately is a multi-billion-dollar issue in our nation today. So it's important to just appreciate who FinCEN is and why this is such an important law in its effect. Because money laundering, as I mentioned, is a multi-billion-dollar issue in the United States. It's a huge drag on our GDP, and a lot of times the money that's laundered is supporting bad actors and criminals. And around the world, actually, beneficial owner information disclosure is pretty prevalent. However, the U.S. has been a late mover to implement these new laws. So despite new administration and despite what political party you sit with, this is a global crisis that ultimately the government here in the U.S. is looking to kind of do their part on. Um, but why you should care about the Corporate Transparency Act, generally speaking, is because it's impacting nearly every single small and medium-sized business throughout the United States, who now must file a BOI report with the federal government, most likely by the end of the year. FinCEN has been accepting reports throughout the entire year. However, many folks have not filed because they're simply unaware that this new requirement. The analysis and the data collection process for filing the report can be complex. It can be time intensive, and just given the nature of the data that's actually on the form itself, it can present some cybersecurity risk. So we want you all to appreciate that and take it into consideration as you determine your best path forward for filing. And some states, if you are an accountant, have not taken a stance on whether this is a what's called an unauthorized practice of law. So your CPA or your accountant might have brought this law to your attention. However, they may not be willing to file this on your behalf. Furthermore, your attorney also might not be willing to file this on your behalf because ultimately attorney fees can be quite cost prohibitive. And I think most attorneys have their clients' best intentions in mind and don't want to charge billable hours for a forum that can be done using a simple piece of technology or another provider. Um, but ultimately, whether you're working with businesses or small business yourself, folks need more awareness around this law and how to handle the reports going forward. And certainly welcome speaking with any of you or your colleagues, one-on-one to further develop, a plan for what needs to be done. But a lot of folks might wonder how many actual private businesses are going to be affected by this new law. And ultimately, the government expects 32.6 million entities to have to file by the end of this year. We actually believe that number is quite conservative and likely is closer to 40 million businesses. And then subsequently, there's about 5 to 6 million entities formed every single year here in the US, which is a remarkable number. So this is not kind of something that's just a simple filing and it's over. There's actual perpetual need to monitor the data and update it with the government periodically. And then furthermore, there's just a number of entities that are formed in general business practices that ultimately will have a tighter time frame for filing. They will not have a full year runway to file. So there ultimately might be 12 to 13 million BOI reports filed annually is the current expectation from FinCEN. So this is something that's new and quite significant. But really, when we started our business 2 years ago, and even up until 12 months ago, there really wasn't much information at all on BOI reporting, on the Corporate Transparency Act. But over the last 12 months or so, you really have started to see credible industry publications starting to pick up on this law and ultimately sharing information the best they can due to the fact that the government just doesn't have the resources at the FinCEN agency to ultimately spread this word as far as it needs to go. But the penalties for this law are quite significant, so it's really important to really understand who needs to file, am I a reporting company or not, and ultimately which individuals need to come together to disclose their information to get compliant. So we'll walk through that um, here on this slide, which is effectively, am I a reporting company? If you are, which individuals are reportable beneficial owners, and then ultimately, if applicable, who are the reporting companies, company applicants, which is another defined term as it relates to BOI and the Corporate Transparency Act. So we'll walk through each of these in the forthcoming slides here. So first off, what is a reporting company? Well, there's two types of reporting companies. There's domestic reporting companies, and then there's foreign reporting companies. But generally speaking, a reporting company is any business that was formed or registered with the Secretary of State or similar office. So it's a legal entity that is formally formed at the state level. So, for example, an LLC would be considered a reporting company in its purest form. A California for-profit corporation or S Corp, C Corp would also, so on and so forth. However, say a sole proprietor who doesn't have a formation at the Secretary of State would not likely need to file a BOI report, or a registered DBA also would not have to file a BOI report. So it really is determined by if there is that formal registration at the Secretary of State level or the entity being formed at the state. Secondly, foreign reporting companies are businesses that are formed outside the United States, however, are registered to do business in the United States. So if you were formed outside of the U.S. but do have an operation here in the U.S., it's likely you will also be a reporting company. Now, um, if you determine that you are a reporting company, it's important to note that there are 23 very specific exemptions. 23 seems like a big number, but when you break it down, these exemptions really only apply to highly regulated businesses that are already reporting in some regard to the federal government. So few examples of that would be companies that, for example, are reporting to the SEC, or certain large investment companies that, say, are publicly traded, for example, or any company that's publicly traded. Obviously, their beneficial ownership information is broadly known. Um, Tax exempt entities have to check a lot of boxes in order to gain that exemption. Thus, the government has clarity on them. Large operating companies, this one's really important because it could apply probably the most broadly out of any of these. But if the business has 20 or more full-time employees and a physical presence in the United States and a 5 million or more in gross receipts on its previous tax return, all three of those specifications are met, then the company is deemed a large operating business and will not need to file. They will be exempt. If only two are met, that does not meet the exemption. Thus, that business would need to file. So it's important to note that. Certain subsidiaries of exempt companies are also exempt. They have to be wholly owned. That's an extremely important specification. And then certain inactive entities that were properly and fully dissolved with the state before January 1st, 2024, will also be exempt. Jumping into the next slide here, which individuals are considered beneficial owners? Well, once again, there are two types of beneficial owners. It's important to note that beneficial owner must be an individual, but effectively, a beneficial owner is anyone who exercises substantial control over the legal entity, such as a C-suite or senior executive officer, director, board member, etc. Or a beneficial owner can be anyone who directly or indirectly owns 25% or more ownership interests in the business. So one's more quantitative, one's more qualitative. Two different definitions. You don't need to be both. You just need to be one or the other. And we list a few examples of the different types of beneficial owners. A husband and wife own a general store through an LLC. Perhaps they have 50-50 ownership in that business. They would both be beneficial owners of that entity. It's important to note that the actual company files the form. So each beneficial owner is not filing a separate form. They're putting their information on the company form that they're affiliated and submitting that single form to FinCEN. Another example of a beneficial owner would be a COO of, say, a 10 employee tech company operating through a corporation. That would be another definition. I think it's also helpful to note that, this applies, in the context of all legal entities, parent companies, and subsidiaries typically need to file a BOI report. But you might ask, oh, well, what happens if the parent company owns the subsidiary? Like, wouldn't the parent company be a beneficial owner? No, because remember, a beneficial owner must be an individual. Thus, you'd have to look through towards who owns the parent company, which individuals own the parent company. And effectively, those individuals would be the individuals that own the subsidiary. So there's kind of a look up and drop down effect that's important to note. Here's more detail on ownership interests and substantial control as it relates to beneficial owners. So these presentation will be shared after we get through today, and ultimately this is a great reference for anyone who would like to gain more detail, or you can reach out to our team. We'd be happy to answer questions. And then another defined term, as I mentioned, is the company applicant. Now, the company applicant only needs to be disclosed for businesses that were formed on or after January 1st, 2024. So if you were formed before that, you do not need to file a company applicant. Simply need to file the company information and the beneficial owner information. However, if this does apply to you, then you must file the company applicant, which by definition is the person who directly files or controls the process of filing the creation or registration document with the state to form that entity initially. So this could be your attorney, it could be your accountant, it could be a corporate services firm, perhaps an online legal service. A variety of different company applicants out there. Could be the beneficial owners themselves if they're hands-on and doing it themselves. So important to note that only applies to 2024 companies and beyond. But the BOI report itself does require information, as we've discussed. It's relatively sensitive information on both the reporting company and the beneficial owners, in addition to the company applicants. So we'll walk through that right now. For the company, you need to disclose the company's legal name, its DBA, and trade name, if applicable. You also need to disclose the current physical address, the jurisdiction of formation, and the EIN number or tax ID number. So if you don't have that, you will need to get one in order to file the BOI report. If you are a disregarded entity, FinCEN really has a preference for you to get an EIN. However, you can use an SSN as an alternative. But this is where we start to get into the sensitive information, as you can tell. And then beneficial owners and company applicants, they both need to disclose the same type of information, which includes first name, last name, date of birth, their address, and then ultimately the unique ID on their federal government issued ID, such as a driver's license or passport, and then an actual copy or image of that government document as well. So once again, very sensitive information, really important to have good processes in place how to collect this information efficiently and then store it efficiently, because the BOI filing is not a one and done filing. You have to maintain the data with the government in order to stay in compliance. Here are some dates and deadlines worth taking note of. Effectively, the deadline to file a beneficial ownership information report is just 18 days away. So there is a tight shot clock folks have had since January 1st of this year to file the report. Though, as I mentioned, the government really dropped the ball on creating enough awareness around this law, which is really unfortunate given the nature of the penalties. But effectively, you all joining today is great opportunity to get this out of the way and ultimately file on time and kind of get this burden off your chest. I did mention earlier how entities formed on or after January 1st will have 90 days from their formation date to file. So if you filed a formational document for an entity earlier this year, might have already breached the 90-day deadline. We have not heard of any fines imposed on folks who have filed post deadline, but eventually those fines will be enforced. And actually, a recent update over the last week or so will further inform that statement. But It's also worth noting that in 2025, that 90-day window shrinks to 30 days. So as you can see quickly, filing a BOI report is becoming part of filing a general legal entity in the United States. I mentioned how BOI reporting is not a one and done filing. It's also not an annual filing the way it's currently slated, but it's a perpetual monitoring of the data and the continuous need to keep it updated with the government. That's why technology can really serve in this instance because it's really hard to create a process around monitoring data without it. But effectively, if anything on your beneficial ownership information report changes throughout the year, it must be reported within 30 days of the change. So going forward, everyone who owns a business in the United States needs to monitor the data on the report, their business's name, their address, their group of beneficial owners, who their C-suite executives are, list them as beneficial owners as they come on, as they offboard. If someone gets married, their name can change. Um, people move around, addresses, IDs expire. There's a lot of changes that need to be taken into consideration, and our platform helps monitor those changes and has a secure place for you to store your information and disclose it very easily with the federal government. So you'll get notifications from our platform upon your ID expiring, and you'll get reminders of all the different changes that could take place so it could stay top of mind. And then if you are an exempt entity out of the gates here, you don't have to file a BOI report, but then ultimately say you lose a big customer or you decide to go public or something of that nature, then you will have to file what's called a non-exempt entity filing, which also needs to happen within 30 days of disclosure. The penalties for misconduct are extremely significant. It's $591 per day per entity. These penalties accrue over time. Upon getting to the $10,000 mark, you will see potential larger penalties such as criminal and jail time. So the government's very much not taking this lightly. These are significant. Once again, we said how there hasn't been any fines or issues to date regarding BOI. But it's important to take note of this because it's not something you want to toy around with. Recent updates from FinCEN, only about 20% of America has filed so far. So here we are practically through the end of the year, and very, very little of businesses, broadly speaking, have filed so far. This leads us to believe there could be potential extensions. However, there's been no indication of that so far, but just given the nature of the government being pretty transparent around not wanting to fine everyone to welcome them into 2025, we're really hopeful that the government does offer some forgiveness. Janet Yellen actually said a few months ago that there wouldn't be any deadlines, largely to encourage folks to get compliant. There are less than 30 days left in the year, as we know. And generally speaking, FinCEN's tone so far has been focused on compliance and doing their best for awareness and continuing to say their awareness efforts will increase. I just don't know if they have the resources to actually do that. But it's important to note that despite these pending deadlines, there was a case brought forth in a district court of Texas last week. There actually has been a number of district court cases brought forth, and some are actually much further along than the Texas district court case. But effectively, there's cases being brought forth challenging, when these BOI reports should be enforced and the deadlines, ultimately how they will be enforced, and then broadly speaking, whether or not it's within the government's power to be enforcing this law. So earlier this year in Oregon and in Virginia, there were cases brought forth that were pretty swiftly denied preliminary injunction. So ultimately, the court sided with the government in those districts, and the plaintiffs were not successful in challenging the CTA. However, in March, there was a case in Alabama where the court ruled effectively that the CTA was unconstitutional and the plaintiffs was the NSBA, which is a group of about 40,000 reporting companies. And ultimately, FinCEN appealed that case actually within 10 days of that court decision at the district court level. and that appeal was taken to the 11th Circuit Court, which ultimately said the case was pretty far-reaching and sounded like the judge was going to side with the government once again. However, last week in the Eastern District Court of Texas, there was a preliminary injunction put forth, putting a nationwide temporary pause on the enforcement of the CTA. Now, this is a federal district court judge, single individual, uh, putting forth a nationwide injunction on a law that was passed by Congress. So it seems like perhaps an overstretch of power. However, it isn't clear whether the injunction applies only to um, reporting companies with a deadline at the end of the year or all of the reporting companies that were inclusive of the ones that were formed in 2024. So there's a lot of uncertainty here, especially given that we're very far along in the reporting process. There's been, millions of people who have already filed, millions of people who are on the brink of filing, and now this news breaks. But, this time, 2 days after that Texas motion for preliminary injunction, which ultimately is not a final ruling, FinCEN and the DOJ appealed that court case to the Fifth Circuit Court. Now, as we saw in the Alabama case, it took many, many, many months for the circuit court to hear just the oral arguments on the case, no less make a verdict. However, today, in fact, today, while I was speaking on this topic to a large group of accountants, the DOJ filed a motion for the court to stay the injunction pending appeal to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. So effectively, what that means is the DOJ is asking the Fifth Circuit to keep the law as is and ultimately expedite a hearing around this law and the nationwide injunction that was filed in Texas. Effectively, the DOJ is seeking at a minimum to have the case only apply to the plaintiffs until either the Fifth Circuit makes a formal decision or and this is likely will get elevated to the Supreme Court. Now, obviously, all of this court back and forth and elevation to the Supreme Court is not going to happen by the end of the year. So it really does present a confusing state of play of whether companies should wait and monitor all these court cases or simply just file and get this out of the way and get back to running your business. So FinCEN's take would say that the CTA is constitutional. They've stated that in their public notice on Friday, but they also emphasized the fact that there were two other district court cases that denied these injunctions, and those obviously have equal power and also were focused just on the plaintiff groups, not trying to take a nationwide stance. So that's an important note. Furthermore, this appeal to the Fifth Circuit will likely take months, and as I mentioned, will likely get elevated to the Supreme Court if the plaintiffs have a case. So, generally speaking, folks are faced with a decision to either A, keep an eye out for more public releases from FinCEN offering guidance, or simply voluntarily file, get this out of the way, and not have the $591 a day fines lingering over your head pending these court cases. Because effectively, it's evident that this court order can be lifted quite quickly, and the law currently, as slated, states that there's a year-end deadline, which would come back into effect. Now, I suspect FinCEN would not fine millions and millions of businesses if those court order was lifted and then the deadline was back in play. I suspect, and once again, this is not legal advice, that there would be some type of extension to offer relief for those. And we've already seen FinCEN offer relief actually for folks in Florida who get a 6 months extension on their deadline if you were in a FEMA impacted area because of the storms. So you might ask, how can we begin to prepare? Because ultimately you should start to prepare the filing Perhaps you want to wait to see how the court cases roll out, but perhaps you want to just get it out of the way. FinCEN does have a portal that can accept manual filings. Um, it's a very bare bones portal. You can't actually store your information in there. So if you do have changes, you're kind of on the hook to re-upload all the information again, which is kind of a hassle. But there's also industry professionals like FileForms who offer technology solutions to do this very efficiently. The FinCEN process can take hours. Typically, filing on our platform takes only about 10 minutes. And there's no cost to sign up and get to know our platform. Ultimately, there is a fee to submit. But we offer a special promo for the Better Business Bureau, which we'll address at the end of the conversation. But effectively, in the next few weeks, you should certainly be creating as much awareness around the CTA as possible. Your fellow businesses, your associations that you work with, a lot of people need help on this, and we certainly want to do everything we can to help people throughout this process. It's important to have an active ID handy, have an EIN, so you're not, filing this on Christmas and ultimately not have some critical piece of information that you need. Um, some folks may choose to get a FinCEN ID, which is kind of an extra step. But ultimately, if you have a ton of legal entities, maybe it does make sense just so you don't have to disclose your information on each form. But we'll highlight why FileForms actually makes that a little obsolete because you can use your information as a beneficial owner across many forms um, or many companies on our platform without having to upload your information again, which is super convenient. Uh, and then I think you should certainly just identify whether you have a lot of entities or not, because that will really determine um, how much work you might have on your hands with this new filing in play. But I want to emphasize how our platform can really make this quite easy. We have bulk upload features for filing all of your entities in one fair swoop. We also have live support every step of the way. But if you're thinking about going the FinCEN route, you kind of get what you pay for. There is no fee to file with FinCEN. However, it is a quite time-consuming process to determine whether you need to file or not. They provide you 93 pages of legal jargon to determine, what your beneficial ownership situation is and, whether or not you need to file. Typically, we've heard folks take hour, 2 hours per report between educating themselves, getting the information gathered securely, and then ultimately filing it, and then the need to do that all over again if there's a single change. This leads to a massive margin for error because there's just not the same guardrails and education throughout the process of filing as we have in our platform. Also, the need to refile because of a change. That's just a whole nother manual input process, which is also very error prone. And then generally speaking, FinCEN is a relatively leanly staffed government agency. Also, they do not have live support or a call center, so it's a little challenging for them to keep up with the questions and the inquiries that they get, given the nature of this being new and somewhat complex. And that's really why, Better Business Bureau and FileForms have come together to create a partnership to create educational experiences like this, but also provide solutions to getting not just BOI filings out of the way, but other federal state compliance, annual reports, for example, registered agent services and the like. So, you can effectively file a BOI report with us and very easily do all the other things. But our experience is somewhat of a TurboTax style guided kind of technology enhanced experience that really does take the filing time from hours to minutes. If you do have many entities, we do have bulk upload features where effectively you download a spreadsheet from our website. You can populate that spreadsheet with any amount of the information you have on the company, the EIN, the address, the beneficial owners, etc. And you can simply upload that and it will pre-populate your FileForms dashboard and allow you to easily manage BOI filings directly to FinCEN. We do have data security and data storage. We use AWS as a backend. It's the number one most secure cloud in the world. So the data that we manage and monitor is all kept very securely, confidentially. The IDs we aggregate are effectively stored in a blinded box so that they can be used across the many entities. Our platform sends a bunch of notifications out to allow folks to know which entities they're being tied to, and you can even request folks' ID via text or email, where they will be sent a secure link to log into FileForms to upload directly to our platform and not ever see that information sitting in an inbox or someplace where it could be compromised. We also have really cool OCR capabilities, which means we can use a smartphone to take a picture of an ID, validate the ID, upload it, pre-populate the information simply by taking the picture. So that's a super time saver, as we like to call it. And furthermore, the ability to have expert assistance every step of the way, with our team on standby via chat or by phone, one click change of information filings. So you don't have to go populate all the information again. You can simply change the address or change the name or, update a beneficial owner and refile with ease. And then our monitoring notifications, say if an ID is going to expire or other changes that happen, we'll send you reminders and notifications so you can stay on top of it. So it can really operate as your security blanket so that you don't have to think about BOI really ever, simply when there's a need to make an update, and our system really helps with that. Here's a little glimpse of what our system looks like. As you can see, very intuitive. On the left there, you can see the companies within a user's dashboard. It's searchable. You can easily make changes, edit. You can bulk check out. You can add new reports. You see the bottom right corner there is our chat bot. And then as you file for company on the right, you can see kind of the information that we went through today and how it's easily updated and edited. So it's a very intuitive experience. It doesn't take a lot of time to do. It could save you thousands of dollars in fines. And ultimately, if you're scratching your head wondering if you need to file or not, we do have a free online wizard, which is right on our website, www.fileforms.com, where you can take a step-by-step process to determine whether you are a reporting company or not. But effectively, we've been working over the last 2 years to educate as many people as possible and really have also partnered with a number of them, which include accountants, CPAs, attorneys, company formation, businesses, and other registered agents, and really helping them provide various solutions, whether they want our enterprise solution, which is FileForms Pro, if they want a referral partner program. For example, if any of you have other folks in your network who will need to file or are business owners, you can become a partner of ours. There's no upfront cost with that. And almost kind of pay back the filing fee that you pay to get your business compliant, which isn't significant. Our prices are $179 for a single filing submission, and then $199 for our annual subscription, which has the monitoring services and actually includes unlimited change of information throughout the year. So if you scan the QR code on the screen and take note of the promo code below, you'll get 20% off those rates, and ultimately be able to get compliant and become a referral partner if you'd like, and hopefully help get this out of the way so you can focus on more important things such as growing your business and spending time with your family. So I'll leave this up on the screen here, but Cynthia, I'm not sure if we have any questions, but I'd be happy to address any questions or with the remaining 15 minutes.
Absolutely. So we have one hand up and we have a question on the box. I'm gonna go with the question on the box first.
Okay.
Darla wants to know, are insurance agencies required to file the BOI report?
No, they are not. They are one of those industries where they are already regulated, and the government does not need any more information from them. So typically, insurance agencies are exempt. However, insurance agencies a lot of the times have many businesses that they work with. So we encourage insurance agencies typically to help create awareness around BOI. I think their clients would really value that, creates a high level of trust. And when you sign up to be a referral partner with FileForms, actually, you get all the necessary educational materials and social media assets you need to make it really easy to spread that awareness. So that would be my recommendation.
Okay, and now I have Kenya Vargas. Her hand is up. I'm gonna turn on your microphone, Kenya, and hopefully you can ask the question that you had your hand up for.
And you might be on mute, Kenya.
Let's see. Kenya, do you hear us? If not, you can put the question in the chat. Well, in the meantime, we have another one on the question box. Barry wants to know if one of your companies does not have any income and is basically dormant, must that company file?
Yeah, Barry, let me follow up. There's 6 specifications that you need to meet for that business to be exempt. There would have to be no foreign ownership, no change in ownership. As of recent, the business would have to be formed prior to, I believe it's January 1st, 2020. So I can send if you want to just send us a note, info@fileforms.com. We can send you the explicit details from FinCEN, help answer that one.
Okay, there's another question. Is a two-member LLC formed to buy, sell, and lease houses required to file?
100%. Those are the exact types of situations that the government's looking to uh, get clarity on.
Okay, we still have a few minutes. If there's any other questions, please feel free to enter those. If not, if there's no other questions, remember you will receive the presentation as well as a recording. And if you have any other questions, I mean, the information is there to reach Frank. Thank you, Frank, for taking the time to shed all the light on this interesting and complex topic. I'm sure we will probably host another one of these as changes come about, so we will love to have you. Thank you to all of those who came in this afternoon. Thank you to Alma Galvan, my colleague on the West Coast, who also promoted this webinar. I think, yeah, people are just thanking for your time, Frank. And yeah, thank you guys so much. You have a good one. And remember to use BBB accredited businesses.
Thank you so much, everyone. It was a pleasure speaking, and please do reach out if you have any questions or have anyone else in your community who needs help with this. We'd be happy to help anyone we can. We're a mission-driven organization, so thank you again, and hope you have a happy holidays.
Bye bye.